doing a video yesterday about thinking and feeling, basically saying that this term thinking wasn't an ideal one in terms of trying to set up some kind of a binary opposition, if that's right, and it would perhaps be better to think in terms of feeling on the one side and then something like calculation or signification or both, or some other more kind of logical, I guess, process on the other, more digital kind of process on the other. But I don't think feeling's right either. You know, it seems to me that feeling and thinking are very closely related concepts. And you can't really have thinking without it being shot through with feeling. And similarly, I don't think you can have this thing called feeling without it being heavily informed by thought. We kind of know that, don't we? Because we can change the way we feel about things by being educated or being, you know, just ruminating on a topic can change the way we think, feel about something. So we know that there's a more complex interplay between these things than just being separate. But in the same way that I don't think thinking is, you know, that end of the continuum, so I don't think feeling is this end either. And I think there's probably more there's more terminal points down there. And the only way I'm thinking of it right now is where is it who said this? It's this expression, I think it was William James who said it, might have been Merleau-Ponty, where he says something like, feelings are the perceptions of bodily states. Feelings are the perceptions of bodily states. And it's something that Antonio Damasio picks up again in a lot of his writings, really. Feelings are the perception of bodily states. What it basically means is that, you know, sorry, I've got lots of stuff rattling next to me here. What it means is that your body, particularly the internal milieu of your body, your somatic responses inside your body, the biochemistry, the way that your sphincters are operating, all the really deep internal stuff is constantly, you know, rearranging itself and forming itself into kind of patterns and responding to the environment it's in and responding to other elements within its own functioning. And that information from your body is sent up to a different part of your brain. So your brain is kind of perceiving what your body is doing. And it's that perception of what your body's doing that is, in the terms that people have spoken about, is this thing called feeling. Damasio calls this bodily stuff emotions. But I think it's slightly confusing that, because we often use emotions to mean feeling, don't we? But, you know, he makes that distinction. There's these entirely embodied things going on, and then there's the perception, the conscious perception of those things, which is the feeling. I'm not sure if he says conscious perceptions, actually. Anyway, perceptions are those things, that is the feeling. And you can kind of test it, I suppose, when you get a distinct feeling, not a pain, but an emotional feeling, like anger. I think William James does this. He invites you to imagine what anger would be like if you took away some of the bodily responses. You know, so if you took away the feeling of pressure in your face, the blood pressure in your face, you imagine that disappearing. If you imagine the tenseness and the tension in your muscles, if you imagine that going away, and you imagine the knot in your stomach and the kind of curling over of your shoulders, so you just strip away these embodied responses one by one, and then imagine what anger feels like without those things. And what you find is that, you know, once you've taken all the bodily stuff out, there isn't, you know, anger kind of loses its anchors, really. There's no meaning for it anymore, because there's nothing to perceive, you know, because anger is the perception of those bodily states that I've mentioned, and others, you know, and more subtle biochemical ones. So anger is the perception of that. So what's the point of that? Okay, yeah, I just suppose that in terms of this thinking feeling thing, and this idea that, you know, either we're James Kirk doing the emotional feeling thing, or we're Mr. Spock doing the thinking thing, I think, because obviously in Star Trek they're not actually that different, those two guys, are they really? And the reason for that, I think, is because they're operating in that weird collective overlapping human space where thinking and feeling are are completely intertwined and a part of one another, and you can't have one without the other. But then north of the thinking bit of it, you've got this calculation and signification and those kind of processes. But south of the feeling thing, you've got these entirely physical bodily responses, biochemical, somatic movements going on, motions, emotions going on. I'd like to have a pithy response to this. I suppose I'm trying to find something pithy to say in the way that Damasio says that we're not thinking beings that feel, we are feeling beings that think. I'm trying to find an equivalent to that. So it'd be something like we are somatosensory systems that calculate, somatosensory systems that signify. That's got a lot of S's in it, that's good. Signifying somatosensory systems